We have no idea what's going to happen to mortality over 10 or 20 or 50 years from this disease. But the companies may start looking at it. Mortality's been getting better for the last 35 years I've been doing this. And there's a possibility that we could see mortality get worse.
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson.
I'm Tunde Ogunlana.
And I'm Marshall Rosen.
We are continuing our series, our special series on the COVID-19 crisis and making sure that you're informed about the opportunities, where things are going in the economy. And so we want to have a really short special session to talk about insurance. Insurance is something that people don't like to think about until they have to think about it, and then it's too late. So we want to talk about how things are changing within the insurance industry, what opportunities there may be for you and your small business. And with us to discuss is Marshall Rosen. Marshall, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So my understanding is COVID-19 is changing, obviously, everything, and it's changing the insurance industry. What are some of the changes that you're seeing as an industry in general, that you're seeing the trends play out?
Well, a couple of big things. One is we're not seeing people, so it's getting to get more difficult. But also underwriting is changing significantly. Some companies are not taking applications. Some companies are putting in limitations. And then a bunch of companies now are coming out with a special underwriting process to use during this time.
So so people are obviously not coming in because no one wants to come in, bring people into their house, take blood, do some of the things that you normally have to do to get insurance. So that's obviously changing. But what, as a person that's in insurance, what do you see as an opportunity for a regular individual who may either need life insurance as an individual? We'll talk about the business in next. And isn't sure if they should go and proceed. Like how should they go about navigating this crazy process?
Well, you can contact us all by phone and email, just as you always have. The only difference is we're not seeing people in person, so we're seeing them online. You can go to meetings, Zoom, what have you, discussing what they need. We've overcome the exam problems because a lot of examiners refuse to do exams, or if they do, they question the insured, they make them gown up, and it's a very unpleasant process. So as the exams got tougher, the companies started changing the way we do business. Again, underwriting is a gathering of information, and a lot of information they can't gather because some people don't know things they have, and some people don't want to tell you things they have. But when we have the blood and urine, we get most of the information that we need. And unfortunately, we can't do that right now.
So then what does that mean in practical? If I think I may want to get life insurance, I'm sure people, we've talked about it often on this show. You need to talk about death and debt with your family on a regular basis. These are uncomfortable conversations. And some folks don't want to think about insurance because it's like they're predicting their own death.
Correct.
Right? I mean, how do you walk people through why you shouldn't view it that way? Because a lot of people still view it that way.
Well, it's about protection of the loved ones or needs, if you have a business loan or something of that nature. So a lot of times I'll walk a couple through saying, paint me a picture what you would do if Tunde wasn't here last week. I never use next week because I don't put the whammy on somebody. And then I say to Tunde, all right, you can't answer. Let the spouse answer. And she says, well, I'll grieve. Okay, great. He's dead, he's buried, he's grieving. You've done the grieving. Now let's talk about, are you staying in this house? Are you going to keep this mortgage? Are you going to keep driving the type of car you drive? Are you going to keep the kids in the school they're in, the clothes they wear, the activities they do? But you just lost his $200,000 of income or $100,000 of income. Now what are you going to do? It took two of you to pay the bills, and now there's one of you.
Right.
And they always say, I'm going to downsize. And I say, well, what does that mean? Because I've found most people that downsize change addresses, and maybe they'll get less square feet, but they don't downsize the price. A lot of times it goes up.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a condo, but they forget about the HOAs and all the other expenses. And then I talk about the debts that are due. I talk about you're saving for an education for your kids. How are you going to do that? So I bring them through what we call the cash needs analysis. What do you need? How much cash do you need immediately upon death? And then once we solve that, I look at the income needs. Okay, so if Tunde was bringing in 100,000 and you've paid off the mortgage and other debts, but how much more income do you need beyond what you earn? And then I'll calculate that number out and figure a total need. And usually at this point, it starts to click. Because so many times someone will say to me, "Oh, I don't need insurance. I have 2 times my income at work. I make 100 grand, so I have 200,000." And it's a little bit of a wisecrack remark, but I say, well, if you were to die, how long do you think you'll stay dead?
Oh well, that's a way of really putting it to them.
Well,
it's kind of a permanent thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something people want to talk about, but I have to emphasize that type of claim does not come back. We're talking about disability, long-term care, you may recover, but I've yet to find anybody recover from a death claim.
Well, that's good. That's hilarious. Therein lies the point. One other thing, this is so if you're not taking people in as an insurance, you're not going through the usual physical requirements of blood and urine, but you're still giving out claims. What does that mean? A person can come in and even if they have an underlying condition, let's say they don't know about it, they can come in and possibly this might be a better opportunity for them to come in versus they have an underlying condition that's later revealed that they didn't know about and it might limit them. What's your thoughts on that?
There is a possibility or a advantage to people who are not using blood and urine because we're not going to pick up things. I mean, I've unfortunately had to tell people in the past, like, "Hey, Bob, do you know you had a heart attack since your last exam?" What are you talking about? So, well, the EKG we did and the EKG that your doctor did are different. And I don't know how to read them, but it says you had a heart attack in between those 2 times. Or diabetes. You know your sugar is through the roof. Or your blood pressure is really high. And unfortunately, I've gotten a couple of the sealed envelopes, which in the old days were HIV.
Right.
And those have to go out immediately. Everything else is a letter to the doctor. But I've had to tell quite a few people that they have conditions they didn't know about. So right now, since we have limited information, some people will slide through and they'll get the coverage they want at a good price where they may not ordinarily do that. At the same time, the insurance companies are being cautious for the exact reason. Now, we're not going in completely blind because there's 2 or 3 other main areas we gather information. One is called the prescription database. Every time you fill a prescription and go through insurance, that information is collected. So I can look back, you apply with me and tell me you have no medical conditions, and we look in the prescription database and find out you've been taking a blood pressure pill and a sugar pill for the last 7 years and filling it every month. It's really impossible for you to tell me that you didn't know about it.
Right.
Okay, and it's very encompassing. And then the other is the MIB, which is the Medical Information Bureau, which is a database that all insurance companies share. Now, you or I couldn't read it because it's all in code, so they never state the obvious, but like an irregularity in the blood is HIV. But there are other codes in there they'll put in, whether it be driving, financial, medical, and you and I cannot get to this Medical Information Bureau. Right. I don't even know where it's physically located, but the insurance companies, that's the first thing they check. And then, in addition, they can do a credit check and an MVR driving check, so they can get a good idea of what you like, but it won't pick up the things you don't know about or haven't been treated for.
How is the coronavirus? How is this being factored into insurance claims? Because no one's seen anything like this within any of our lifetimes, and unless people were around for the 1918 Spanish flu, no one's seen this before, right? So, how are you dealing? How is what as an individual do you need to know about how insurances are thinking about this, and 2, what changes, if any, might be made simply because of the coronavirus? I mean, in terms of how insurance companies are going about insurance.
Okay, got to break that down into several sections. One, current claims we know nothing about because I don't know if a death claim's actually been paid on a coronavirus person yet. But going forward, they're just starting to have studies coming out of people that get the disease, treated, recover, I read a month ago, I read that there's expected a 20% loss in lung function in some of these people permanently.
Wow.
Okay. And we don't know what the repercussion is going to be. Just yesterday, I read another study saying that many of the recovered people have heart conditions that were unknown before. And they believe that the virus is causing some of these. It may pop up in a week, a month, a year, or 20 years. So one part is we have no idea what's going to happen to mortality over 10 or 20 or 50 years from this disease. But the companies may start looking at it. Mortality's been getting better for the last 35 years I've been doing this. And there's a possibility that we could see mortality get worse because of this. And maybe not current deaths, which is what mortality really raises, but expected deaths.
Right.
The insurance companies work on the law of large numbers. Any one policy you're going to have a loss on. Because if you take a term policy that's $500 a year for $1 million, you can't live long enough to ever pay $1 million. It's a guaranteed loss to the insurance company. But if they have 1 million policies, a certain percentage of which nobody will die before the term policy is over, so that's pure profit. And some will drop it, and some will ultimately get paid in a claim. But term insurance itself actually has a 0.5% claim rate.
Wow.
Because term only lasts for a term of time, 10,
Sure.
15, or 20 years. And the reason it's so cheap is the expected mortality is much longer than that. That's why you don't get term policies on 80-year-olds, because they're at life expectancy or near it. So that is something that currently the insurance companies are trying to figure out. How is that going to change things going forward? Will these lung and heart restrictions or conditions change mortality going forward? There's
Right.
been no changes yet, but it's months. Most of these things take years to actually come out and show themselves. As far as statistics, it's always statistics.
Right.
The bigger companies aren't even using general mortality tables. They're using their own personal mortality tables from real claim experience.
Right. Tunde, I know you had a follow-up question.
Yeah, no, this is great. Marshall, thanks so much for joining us and sharing this important information. We own a wealth management firm, and Marshall's team has been a great resource in helping our clients over the years. So I just want to really reiterate this level of expertise that we're hearing, because I feel like Marshall is so important. What you're sharing here, the things about the prescription drug database, the Mortality Insurance Bureau, Medical Insurance Bureau, getting my words mixed up here. A lot of people don't understand how insurance works behind the scenes, and I try and explain that to people that, remember, insurance companies, especially life insurance, they're in the business of managing their own risk. The underwriters, the actuaries, so on and so forth. So when you're staring at a literal pandemic that has never been seen by humanity before, this novel coronavirus, you're absolutely right. And it's sometimes hard for those of us in our business because you want to sound the alarm to the people you know and the people you care about, but you run the line of being that stereotypical pushy insurance guy, right? You're telling people you should just do this now. But speak to also, if you could, some other things that I think are important for people to understand, because if we're reminded about the 2008 recession, and just as a most recent kind of event like this in the rearview mirror here for us as a society, what we're starting to see happen right here in early April of 2020 is looks like we could see things that mirror what happened back then. We're seeing a lot of layoffs. We could start seeing people default on mortgages, car notes. And so what's going to happen if that does happen is things like credit and other things that may get affected. And I understand that it's not only health that is looked at by underwriters. They also look at things like credit. I've seen people get declined because they failed to meet child support payments. So can you talk about, as people might find themselves in uneasy times now, what else should they be considering that when it comes to life insurance, that if they were thinking about it, maybe it's better to get it sooner than later because of some of the risks that might also come up besides just health if we see a bad recession?
Well, you're right. The credit does come into play, not so much as a credit score. What they're looking for is real problems. Might you commit suicide, or might someone else help you do that? A business partner. That's when you're seeing the judgments and things that will affect the ability to purchase insurance. So we're always cognizant of that. So there's medical, there's financial, there's also I'm looking for the word. It's what type of activities you do, like parachuting and motorcycle racing.
Those high risk,
high risk,
being a
high
pilot,
risk things, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those have actually gotten easier over the years because we've gotten more data on them. Scuba diving used to be an automatic rating, and today, if you're going down less than 100 feet, we really don't care. Pilots used to be a big problem. One of the companies I use, as long as you have 250 hours as a pilot, they don't care.
Do they actually
anymore.
ask you these questions? Do you scuba dive?
Oh, 100%. It's like mountain climbing, bobsledding, parachuting, racing. Those are real questions.
I do all those. I think I hadn't done them yet. I've done all of them by now.
It doesn't.
Already insured. Too late. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter if you've done them. So, like everyone in the world that's gone into the Caribbean has done, a open water scuba dive.
Yeah, I'm certified. Yes.
Okay, that's one time. They teach you in the pool, they bring you down, very controlled. They're looking at ongoing activities.
Okay.
So if you did it once, you're not doing it again, not a problem. If you were a pilot 10 years ago and gave up your license, not a problem.
Right.
But even if you don't fly, but you maintain your license, now they care. Because you can just go get in the plane.
Well, an interesting thing too, Marshall, while you're bringing up these kind of questions they ask, one thing I remember is they always ask about where you've traveled to in the past 2 years and where are you planning on traveling in the next year or two. And I could see something like this coronavirus, again, underwriters may be taking those questions a little bit more serious now. Had you traveled somewhere like China or Italy or one of those kind of hotspots in the last year, or if you put on an application, you're planning on traveling to one of those. So again, I didn't even think of that till this conversation, but even where we move internationally might affect underwriting guidelines.
That's correct.
In the
now,
future.
In Florida, that's a forbidden question. So you and I don't deal with that a real lot.
Yeah.
But when I was in New York, that was a standard question. For some reason, Florida doesn't allow the question. But I had to put down anywhere you've been, and then also where you're going. Now, I try and remind people that I'm an intermediary between the insurance company and the client. And I have an obligation to do field underwriting. But I'm not an investigator. And please answer the questions I ask. Don't just start telling me stuff I don't want to know. Yeah. Very similar to if you get pulled over by an officer driving.
Yeah, it's something we tell clients. So being very quickly to interrupt you, because I think this is such an important point. Lawyers are good at doing this. They like to ask you a question and wait for silence, and you think that silence means you keep talking. Don't. Just answer the question asked and shut up.
Right. I had a client once that one of the questions.
Hey, hold on. Wives are good to do that too, so be careful.
I'm not going to touch that.
I'm not going to touch that either, but I should
have. You're newly married. Don't touch it.
You're getting me in trouble today. Go ahead.
I had one of the questions is, do you use heroin, cocaine, or barbiturates or any other illegal drugs? Okay, which is another whole topic because, where does marijuana fit in these days? Right. But I had one 26-year-old guy think it was a joke, and the nurse asked him that question. He says, yeah, I use it every day. And he didn't notice that she wrote it down. And 4 days later, I got what we call the sealed blue envelope from the insurance company, which means put this in the insured's hands and don't open it. So I brought it over to him and opened it, and it says, we're declining the policy because you admit to using heroin. He's like, I don't use heroin. And I had to go call the underwriter and find out, and that's when I found out about the joke to the nurse. Well, she wrote it down. And the company said, it's a decline. And how long is that going to be a decline? Well, we've now added that to the MIB. So every time he applies for insurance in the future, they're going to see he was declined for using narcotics.
Wow,
that's really important. People know that, right? Because I had no idea that happened that way. That's really, really informative.
And and I knew he didn't do these things, especially the volumes he was talking about. I made a deal with the insurance company. He had to take 5 blood tests on 5 consecutive Mondays, and if they all came back negative, they'll say he was joking and they took it off his record, which he did, and he passed. But answer what's asked and don't joke. They don't. These people are hired to record information, and they're going to record whatever you tell them.
All right, no, that's really useful. As we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask questions I've been asking people that are what I'll call my Corona questions. So, you have any funny moments in your quarantine life that you've had that you want to just share with people? What do you have any just things that's been funny because of, you've changed being in more, or what? Do you have anything you?
Well, one thing is when you do these Zoom meetings, you got to remember you're on camera. We had one woman that picked up her iPhone and went into the bathroom, dropped her pants, and sat in the toilet, and with about 60 people watching.
Oh, jeez.
So I'm doing my best.
The camera and the mic are always on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Look at you, Rob. The way to avoid it is use your laptop or your desktop. Don't use your phone.
Or just use common sense. How about that? Damn. I mean, like.
I was thinking, Marcia, you're going to tell us someone's picking their nose or their ear or something. But that went straight to it. She took the phone to the bathroom.
We're like,
and she didn't know it. And she's, you could see the screen. Everyone's laughing and pointing. And, finally someone must have texted her, like, turn you, because all of a sudden she turned the phone around.
Oh, damn.
So.
That's a good one. That is a good one. That's a good story. I've heard a lot of these funny conference call stories. Do you have any message of just hope and where you hope we go not only as a country, but as humanity post this coronavirus?
Well, I actually see a few good things coming out of this. I've got a boat, so one of my escapes is I can go up and down the intercoastal. And most times you see all these beautiful houses and there isn't a soul around. Nobody actually uses the beautiful settings. But now as I drive, at least every other house is people outside enjoying the pools, the docks, the views, the breeze. But even more important, I'm seeing parents with their children. I see fathers playing ball with their kids, or throwing a frisbee, or doing whatever, riding bikes together, walking together. I think that when this gets done and we get back to the world again, there's going to be better relationships between the parents and the children, or siblings, or whatever. I'm seeing some good things that come out of this overall. I also think that as an American public, we're going to reevaluate our need to go to the office every day.
Yep.
Because we're learning we don't have to.
Nope, we don't. I mean, we're able to, life goes on. We're able to interact and we don't have to leave and interrupt our routine every single day and go and spend a bunch of money on gas and stress ourselves out.
I'm accomplishing about 99% of what I could accomplish in the office. And the other 1% is just some physical files that I didn't think to grab before I left, and I won't go back. Other than that, I have everything. I bought, a printer scanner for everyone in the office, and we can do everything. And now insurance companies have loosened things up. Like they will now take DocuSign signatures where they wouldn't before. Because other than that, if you had to see somebody in person get a wet signature, you're out of business.
Yeah.
They've lightened up on the underwriting. Okay, they're doing it without fluids. They're going to be more cautious without fluids, but they'll let you come back afterwards and give us fluids and get a better rating if it's so appropriate. But I see that maybe we'll start thinking about ourselves, our families, our communities, our country a little bit more. I'm told that the waters are clearing up and the air is clearer, and a lot
the world might function better without us being the way we used to be. That might be the lesson in this. Right.
I mean, I saw pictures of Italy, Florence. No, not Florence. Where's the
Venice?
Yes, where the water's actually clear and you can see through it.
Wow.
That hasn't happened on my canal here. I still can't see the bottom, but hopefully it will.
Yeah, we'll see. Exactly. So, look, Marshall Rosen, I appreciate the knowledge. Please come on again. If you can send us some links so we can share it with the audience, we'll make sure that they'll know where they can get some good information. Appreciate you having you on the show.
Thank you very much.